Hi guys! Today we're going to begin with the actual Texas Revolution, the war that earned Texas the right to be a free country. Let's start with the Texians' demands for fair treatment. When Texas became part of Mexico in 1821, only about 7,000 people lived in that state. By 1835, the number had grown to more than 50,000. Mexico made many new rules to control that growing population. The settlers became unhappy under Mexico's rules and laws. They decided they wanted to be free from Mexico. This disagreement led to the Texas Revolution. Texas was far from Mexico City. Travel between Texas and Mexico City was not easy. In the early days, Mexico mostly left the colonists alone. The settlers became used to governing themselves. They liked being able to choose their religion. The Mexican government wanted all Texas colonists to follow the Roman Catholic religion. The colonists did not like Mexico pressuring them to do things their way. It was difficult for the colonists to communicate with the Mexican government. There was a language barrier. The Mexicans spoke Spanish. Most of the colonists spoke English. Stephen F. Austin was one of the few bilingual settlers, meaning he could speak both languages. Then, on April 6, 1830, the Mexican government made a new law. The law stopped U.S. citizens from immigrating to Texas. Mexico knew that some Texans were getting unhappy. The Texians wanted to create a new government free from Mexico, and the Mexican government did not want this to happen. This new law also stopped slavery. This new law also stopped slavery, and it limited trade between Texas and the United States. This law did not help. Instead, it caused settlers to become even more unhappy. Texas towns and businesses would not grow without trade and immigration. Some settlers still had family living in the United States, and under the new law, the family members could not come to live in Texas. So in October of 1832, a convention was held in San Felipe de Austin. The Texians wanted to find ways to strengthen their relationship with Mexico. So 16 of the larger settlements and colonies sent delegates to meet together to form some ideas. And the delegates agreed on these certain terms. Immigration from the United States should continue. Texas should form into a state within the country of Mexico. And the Mexican government should give power to the colonists to make their own laws and decisions. Sound familiar? It's so much like the American Revolution, where we sent delegates from the colonies to decide what was fair and reasonable. The Texian delegates modeled their methods after the American Revolution. Then, in April of 1833, the delegates met again, and they discussed the ideas from the previous convention. This time, they decided to form their own state, and Sam Houston was selected to lead the committee in writing a constitution. The delegates selected Stephen F. Austin to take their concerns to the government of Mexico. The Mexican government was worried about settlers rebelling. They would not let Texas go without a fight. The bravery of the Texians is what eventually brought about our Texas independence. These men could have lost everything if they had, including their lives, just by meeting at the convention. There were Mexican soldiers in the old Spanish presidios. Would the Mexican government use them to control the Texians? After the convention, Stephen F. Austin headed to Mexico City. He arrived there on July 18, 1833. He had traveled all the way to talk to the president of Mexico, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Santa Anna was away, though, on other business. After waiting 5 months, Austin decided simply to write him a letter. He asked the Tejano leaders to work with the Anglo settlers. He wanted them to set up a state government within Mexico. Finally, Santa Anna returned to Mexico City and met with Austin. Santa Anna listened to the concerns of the U.S. settlers, and he decided to allow immigration to Texas. But he did not agree to let Texas become its own state. Austin began his journey back to Texas, but in northern Mexico he was arrested and put into jail. The Mexican government had learned about his letter to the other Tejano leaders. The letter upset Santa Anna. It offended him, and he kept Austin in jail for almost a year for disloyalty. In 1835, Austin was finally set free and allowed to return home, but the Texians' mistrust of Santa Anna continued to grow. The Mexican president Santa Anna decided to deal harshly with the Texas settlers, so he sent troops up to Texas to frighten the settlers. He hoped that this would make them comply with his new laws. He also started making the settlers pay taxes, but this upset the settlers even more. By 1835, the settlers felt that President Santa Anna was nothing more than a dictator. The settlers started rising up against him and against the Mexican troops in Texas. In early 1835, William B. Travis, who we will learn a lot more about later, was a young man, and he led a group of men to fight the Mexican soldiers located at Anahuac. The settlers surprised the soldiers and forced them to leave. Santa Anna responded to this uprising by sending General Martin Perfecto de Cos. The Texians knew Santa Anna was serious about keeping control of Texas. The Texas Revolution soon began. The first official battle of the Revolution took place on October 2nd, 1835, at Gonzales. Mexican soldiers under the leadership of General Cos were sent to claim a cannon that had been loaned to the Texas settlers. The Texas settlers were using the cannon at Gonzales to defend themselves against Native Americans. Santa Anna did not want the settlers to have such a powerful weapon, so he sent a small group of soldiers under General Cos to reclaim it. The Texian militia gathered at Gonzales. They refused to let the Mexican soldiers have the cannon. Matter of fact, when the demand was made, the Texians replied by flying a large white flag with a picture of a cannon drawn on it up over the fort of Gonzales with the statement, "Come and take it." They attacked and were able to drive away the Mexican soldiers. Excited and motivated by this very first victory, they immediately marched not very far away and engaged in a second battle simply a week later at the Presidio de la Bahia. This is what we refer to as Goliad. On November 3rd, 1835, the Texas delegates met and held another convention. They chose Sam Houston to lead their army, and they asked Stephen F. Austin to go not to Mexico City this time, but to go to the United States. They thought he would be able to find support for their fight for independence by a nation who had recently fought for their own independence. Austin was to find money, supplies, and volunteers who would come and help the Texians. On December 5th, 1835, Texian soldiers fought their way into the city of San Antonio. 4 days later, Martin Perfecto de Cos surrendered with the Mexican army. The Texians seized the Mexican weapons, but they allowed the soldiers to return home. The Texians were excited. They believed by this surrender that they had already defeated Santa Anna. The Texians left only about 100 soldiers to guard the fort of San Antonio. They turned the San Antonio de Valero mission, better known today as the Alamo, into their base. The President Santa Anna was furious about the defeat in San Antonio. He was embarrassed that such a small group of settlers had defeated his large and highly trained group of soldiers. So he decided to personally lead a large army against the Texians. Word soon spread that Santa Anna's army was marching fast toward Texas. Small groups of men began heading back to reinforce those stationed at San Antonio. William B. Travis brought 25 men from San Felipe to Austin. This group included such notable men as Juan Seguin and many other Tejanos with him. One of Seguin's men, Gregorio Esparza, brought his entire family with him. James Bowie arrived with the help of about 25 of his personal troop of men. Davy Crockett arrived with 12 other men from Tennessee. George C. Kimball and 32 volunteers from Gonzales were the last to arrive. While the army was still small, more men were thought to be on their way. The Alamo defenders believed that Santa Anna was still far enough away. They thought his soldiers would not possibly reach San Antonio until the spring. They were sure that they had plenty of time for reinforcements to arrive and for them to prepare. But Santa Anna arrived in San Antonio on February 23rd, much earlier than they expected, leading an army of 5,000 men. The Mexican soldiers far outnumbered the Texians. They surrounded the Alamo and placed it under siege. The Texians could only hope that reinforcements might arrive before Santa Anna actually attacked. We are going to spend the rest of this week studying the significant battles of the Texas Revolution in detail.